Good morning and welcome to the Catalyst webinar series presented by the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA. The Catalyst webinar series is a bi-weekly educational platform for creating success and change in your club and career. This week we are very excited to welcome Mr. Jay Karen as our presenter. Mr. Karen is the CEO of the National Golf Course Owners Association. He leads the golf industry's trade association and initiatives to support the success of the golf course business. In his role at the NGCOA, he chairs the board of the industry-wide advocacy coalition, We Are Golf, and serves on the Golf USA Tee Time Coalition Board, a joint initiative with the PGA of America and the advisory board of the World Golf Hall of Fame. The Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, CBS Radio, the Golf Channel, Golf Digest, and many other associations call upon Jay for his insights on the golf industry. Jay also serves as the CEO of two associations in the lodging and hospitality industry, and he is a certified association executive by the American Society of Association Executives. Mr. Karen, thank you very much for volunteering your time this morning. I know you're a very, very busy man, and we are lucky to have you on the Catalyst. Thank you very much for being here this morning.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. And welcome to all the folks attending the webinar today. So what I'll do is, since our time is important together, I'll move fairly quickly through my slides, but we have some moments in time where I'll stop and take questions. Does that work, John? I can't remember if you can speak as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. Then that's what we'll do. I've broken it up into sections, and we'll take some Q&A and stop at those moments in time.
And guys, ladies and gentlemen on the Catalyst this morning, please exercise the use of your question box when Mr. Karen opens it up to Q&A, or if you see something along the way that you would like clarification on, feel free to hit that question box. I'll be monitoring that as we go through the presentation.
Great. Thanks, John. So let me, there's going to be probably about 10 or 15 minutes of context and then maybe 30 minutes of content for you to think about. And what I want to do is to set the stage a little bit is to remind folks that the content that I share here, besides some of the research slides, but my thoughts on various issues, is really food for thought for everybody listening. Because one thing I learned in 22 years of running associations for small businesses is I never tell small business operators what they should do, what they need to do, what they must do. That does not fly, especially in the golf industry when we've got 14,000 golf courses and every one of them is run independently for the most part. And so a lot of independent thinkers there. So I give food for thought because I get to sit at this perch and basically interface with a ton of operators and all of the other associations. And so I've kind of distilled it down to what I think are some of the top issues on the minds of our members and sharing that with you today. So a little bit about who we are, just as context, is the NGCOA. Among the alphabet soup of associations in golf, we represent the owners and top operators of the golf courses. We've been around for almost 40 years. When you look at our membership, we really mirror the industry pretty well. A lot of folks think that we're just kind of for the public golf courses, but we have almost 25% of our courses are private clubs. We've got a lot of premium daily fee, standard daily fee, value daily fee. So we mirror the industry pretty well. About 3,300 dues-paying golf courses in our organization and growing. And about 40% of our members fall under what we call MCOs, or multi-course owners. And that could be 2 or 3 courses in their portfolio, but just goes to show you that almost half of our membership, which is a reflection of the industry, is owned or operated by companies that do more than one golf course. So I guess we have a lot of people who are gluttons for punishment, not just own one, but let's go ahead and own 2 or 3 or 4 of these things, right? Because you know how much of a challenge it is to run golf courses. But anyway, so even though we only have 3,300 members in our organization, we reach every golf course in the United States every month through Golf Business Magazine, which hopefully everybody here receives, and our email communication. So we represent the entire industry with the work that we do, but we're supported by the dues-paying golf courses. And some of the events that we put on, we host the annual Golf Business Conference, the MCO Retreat, and we put on a new technology conference in the fall out in Las Vegas called the Golf Business Tech Con. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. A little bit about me to establish a little legitimacy as to why I was asked, I suppose. I'm not a golf course operator, certainly, but I've been in association management for 22 years and solely in the golf and lodging industries. And so I've seen a lot in this space. I'm a member of ASAE, which is the American Society of Association Executives. So I guess that would be kind of the PGA of America for people who run associations. I've been on the board of the United States Travel Association as well. So I kind of have an eye to the hospitality and travel business. I do have a passion for golf. So as PGA members, I think you'll like that. I've been playing golf for probably 33, 34 years. But I have a stronger passion for small businesses, and representing their interests. There's nothing that impresses me more than people who get up every day, put their money at risk, open the doors, and serve customers. It's a grind, and it's not always easy. And I have great respect for people who run small businesses. And as John mentioned, I'm lucky right now to sit in the chair position of We Are Golf, which is that conglomerate of all the major golf organizations at the national level to advocate for the industry. And particularly with the PGA of America, this Golf USA Tee Time Coalition, which is a relatively newer organization that's addressing a lot of the issues in the tee time space, kind of a watchdog agency, as well as an ombudsman office, that if you have grievances with your tee time companies, you can call the office and seek some help. So anyway, that's just a little bit about me and about our organization. And so a couple of things I want to also set the stage with. As PGA professionals, if you are the general manager or the director of golf or the head professional, the assistant professional, whatever your role is, what I encourage you to do when you think about this, as well as when you go back to your jobs on a daily basis, is to obviously act out your job description, what you were hired to do, but think like an owner. If you think like an owner, your stock, not only will you be more valuable to your company, but your stock value will rise as an individual in your career and so forth. I'm telling you, I'm a CEO of a company here, and I've got 20 employees, and those that seem to be concerned about the things that I'm concerned about as CEO of the organization, those are the folks that are really being successful in the job. And so that's what, when I go through these issues, these are going to be the issues that are keeping owners up at night. So if you are in touch with those issues and you can do something about it, to me, that will make you more valuable as an employee than anything else. Also, I'm going to share some of the macro issues happening in the industry, and I would encourage you to take micro action, meaning do something about it at your course and show and demonstrate that you're understanding of these larger issues. Last year, I shadowed a golf course operator outside of Detroit, Michigan. It was an owner, and it's a family business, and I spent 2 days just listening and watching. And at the NGCOA level and at the section level and the national office level, we deal with a lot of these larger issues in golf. And what I learned was that like player development and big industry issues, that the operator who's opening the doors every day, that they're concerned about those issues, but it's not their concern. If you get my drift, they're worried about the customer walking through the door, and they're not necessarily in tune with some of the larger issues going on. What I encourage you to do is to kind of bridge those two issues. Be the bridge between these larger issues I'm going to talk about and taking action at your course. And lastly, whatever you're learning here today, when you're seeing other professionals that may not be members of the PGA of America, talk to them about what you're learning here today and the discussions you're having, and encourage them to join the PGA of America. It's a great organization we work very closely with. So any chance you get, talk about the value of these Catalyst webinars and what's going on. And no, Tom Addis did not ask me to say that, but I certainly, as an association membership guy, I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to share what's going on. Okay, so diving into the food for thought. And I'm big on analogies. And so the primary analogy I'm using today is sailing out in the waters, right? So this is what the golf industry used to feel like. For those of you on the line that have been around a long time, especially before the recession, you're on a sailboat, you're out in the water, and the wind is blowing, right? It's at your back. You're moving along. This is great, right? That's what it used to feel like until probably, I would say, about 2006, 2007 for a lot of folks, maybe even 2008, 2009 for others. But so at least 10 or 12 years ago, up until then, it was relatively smooth sailing with the wind at your back, right? On a daily basis, this is what the golf industry can sometimes feel like, right? The media is not always kind to us. Problems every day that are vexing you, getting up and dealing with customer issues and owner issues and community issues and so forth. it can feel like this on a daily basis, but tell you what, this is really what's happening in the golf industry, where we've got calm waters in the sense of the large landscape of this, but no wind at our back, right? So it's up to us to figure out how we're going to sail these waters when the wind has kind of disappeared. And we're going to talk about how what wind I'm talking about has disappeared, and that's the participation levels that we used to see. So I want you to think about that. Like, wow, I'm sitting here in the middle of the ocean in a boat running this golf course. There's no wind at my back. What the hell do I do? And that's what a lot of this webinar is about today. And then here's another analogy that I like to use, and I think I may have used this one in Pomona a few weeks ago when I was with some of you, is that the image on the left represents the industry the way it used to be, right? You're running on a treadmill, but the treadmill is flat. So it's not as difficult, but you're running, you're exercising, you're getting to the office every day, you're opening the doors, you're serving customers, you're trying to do good things. But the treadmill's flat, so it's not that hard. But the industry and the climate has changed. So now all of a sudden the treadmill's on an incline. And there's no indication that that's going to change, right? And so what we have to do is get fit. We have to figure out as operators and owners, how do we get physically fit, so to speak, to handle the incline, the new setting of the treadmill? Because it's not going to change. And if you're fit, then you can handle it. You can succeed, right? If you're not fit, that's when you could possibly fall off the treadmill or really hurt yourself, right? So let's talk about some numbers, just to put all of this into context. When we look at the last 22 years of golf course supply in the industry, measured in 18-hole equivalents. And by the way, these slides, some of these slides come from the National Golf Foundation. We saw an enormous rise in supply between 86 and 2006, right? 4,500 golf courses came into the market. Since 2006, we've seen a decrease in supply of 1,070 courses. So we've kind of given back about 25% of what we grew. And the indicators are that that's not going to slow down anytime soon. We're still going to see this course closure, the net closure continue for at least 5 to 10 years is what we're projecting. Last year in 2017, just as to put a finer point on this, we closed 206 golf courses in the United States and opened 16. Now, I will say that this is one of many KPIs or key performance indicators of an industry. When you're looking at an entire industry, I would not say it's the best indicator, simply because so many golf courses were built without real concern about the demand for golf. They were built to sell houses as part of residential housing communities. They were built as a jewel in the amenity package and to increase property values. And so when you look at that increase in supply, it's really not very fair to say that the closures has a lot to do with demand shrinking. It has to do with courses maybe that shouldn't have opened in the first place, or the effects of those courses, right? So we're kind of dealing with that for the foreseeable future, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if you're, like I said, opening up the doors every day as a golf course operator. To see a course or two close in your market, as long as demand is staying fairly steady, that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. But again, it's not the only indicator we should look at for health of an industry. Looking at participation numbers, we are seeing a flattening of participation, certainly at around the 24 million American mark. The participation rate of Americans is down to about 8% of Americans that pick up a stick and play the game of golf. So we're, the NGF in particular is looking at these numbers closely. But what was interesting is that even though there was a tiny dip in the number of golfers that played, the rounds played in 2017 was actually, I think, up a hair or relatively flat. It was marginal. So that means that the golfers that are sticking around are playing a little bit more golf. And I think we know that tends to skew at the older level, maybe that the baby boomers now have the time and inclination to play a little bit more. And guess what? They are, right? So yeah, but just wanted to put that into context that we're still dealing with a flattening of demand right now as we see it. This is really the number that puts the finest point on all of this, that in 1990, there were approximately 1,882 golfers per golf course in America. That's down to 1,710, which means we're all competing just a little bit harder for the same golfer. And I think we're seeing some interesting effects because of that, right? I think we get some golf course operators that get a little bit smarter, a little bit savvier, or more savvy because they have to, compared to what it used to be, right? So when, let's say, 8% of your customer base disappears, you're going to start doing things a little bit differently, start paying attention to maybe different practices and so forth. And hopefully that's what's going to happen with you all going forward, is that you're going to be risk takers and progressive in how you approach your business. So the indicators are very good though right now. So that was kind of taking the temperature of where we are today, but the indicators, the future indicators, are pretty darn good. When we look at latent demand, this survey of Americans that say, how interested are you in playing golf on a golf course? Latent demand has nearly doubled in the last 5 years of people who are saying, yes, I'm interested. Now, what are we doing to activate that interest? That's a really good question that hopefully some of today's webinar will encourage you to do. But very, very good indicator. If you are a publicly traded company, you'd be asked about your indicators. Well, as an industry, some of these are indicators, and they're very positive. When we look at diversity and age, you look on the right side of this, you see the current golfers, that 24% are women, 18% are non-Caucasian, 37% are under the age of 35. But when you look at the beginners, people who are now picking up the game of golf, we're seeing a greater share of diversity and a movement towards youth. So that's really good, again, as a future indicator for our industry. Here's also a very interesting stat showing the number of people who played golf in 2017, going back to that 23.8 million mark, and the number of people who say that they played on an off-course facility, a Top Golf, a driving range, or something other, drive shack, something other than a traditional golf course, and that number is on the rise. I'm certain a lot of that has to do with the Top Golf effect, no question about it, but what it's telling us is that there are a heck of a lot of people that are willing to pick up a golf club, have a good time with it, and we need to figure out, what do we do about that? How do we bring that interest to the golf course? Selfishly, I represent the green grass facilities. How do we take and almost steal what's happening at the Top Golfs of the world and bring that experience, that kind of thing, to the golf course? And we're starting to see more and more of that. In fact, I just saw a story about Indian Wells out there in Southern California that installed this really interesting outdoor gamification system from NextLinks that just looks amazing. So you get some risk takers out there doing some interesting things to improve or diversify the golfing experience. And then when we look at youth in particular, 20 years ago, 17% were girls. Today, 35% are. And then 20 years ago, 6% non-Caucasian and 25% today are non-Caucasian. So this bodes well, because if golf reflects America, then we're more likely to ride out the ups and downs of whatever is happening in the economy or whatever is happening in society. We want to reflect America. So getting back to our treadmill example here. So we live in a new environment with new challenges. Organizations like the PGA and NGCOA certainly are here to help get you fit to deal with the new challenges, but it's still up to you as the PGA professionals to do the work. So in the following slides, I've picked a few of the bigger issues on the minds of our members. Notwithstanding here might be some very localized issues, some unique issues like water. You may be a golf course that is having a very difficult time getting access to affordable water. That is a very real issue for you. It's not one of the larger industry issues that if we were to poll the country to ask them what's on their minds, it wouldn't be at the top of the list, but certainly I understand that. Or weather patterns. The Northeast got slammed this year with rain and snow, and so they've had a late start and their rounds are off considerably this year. And so there's nothing we can do about the weather, and sometimes we can do things about water, but not all the time. So those kinds of issues are notwithstanding here. These are just kind of broader brush issues that are on the minds of most operators, no matter what kind of facility you run. So let's keep moving. All right, number one is simply rising expenses. Every golf course owner that is aware of their business, that is really paying attention to their business, is very mindful of their cash positioning and net income, the P&L and the balance sheet, right? If you sign the front of the check, these are the things that keep you up at night right now in the golf industry. So rising expenses, in particular labor. And you have to pay people to run the golf operations. And again, I'm gonna back up here one moment and just remind you to think like an owner as we go through this. I know a lot of you are employees. I don't know where you are in the totem pole of employment at your facility, but these are the issues the owners are dealing with. So try to take your own hat off for a moment and think like an owner and be sensitive to these issues so that when you go back and put your hat on of what you do for a living, you can understand, you can have this context into what you bring to the table. So labor being one of them, right? Minimum wage in California in particular is at $11, I believe, and it's going to be going up to $15 by 2022. May not seem like a big deal. I mean, a lot of golf courses probably have some minimum wage employment, but on the grand scheme of a business, it may not seem like a big deal. But what that also does is it sets the bar at a new level. So it's not just about paying your minimum wage workers more, but it's the folks that are making above minimum wage. And a lot of people go to work and they look at what they're getting paid in comparison to what minimum wage is, right? Not necessarily, they use that as the benchmark. So someone who might be making $17 an hour right now, if minimum wage goes up to 12 bucks, they're gonna think, geez, I'm now closer to minimum wage, so maybe I should ask for a raise. So it kind of has this upward pressure of raising expenses across the board for the hourly wage workers because it sets a new bar, or it sets, I should say, it sets a new floor to the whole compensation discussion. So that's a big, big issue and an unknown that owners are figuring, what am I going to do about the rising costs of labor? Also with that is overtime pay and the non-exempt employees. This gets, if you don't know your overtime rules, this gets a little bit confusing. But basically, to simplify this, that if you are a non-exempt employee and you're on salary, you may be due overtime pay. Right, a lot of businesses put people on salary. They think because they're on salary, they might not have to pay them overtime. The IRS has some, and the Department of Labor has some pretty strict regulations on what that means. And this is a moving target. There were some regulations proposed by the Obama administration to kind of change all of this a little bit, and the Trump administration put the kibosh on that. So, but we're looking at this. So as an owner, you're looking at this thinking, oh my gosh, these folks that I have on salary, say for $38,000 a year. Am I going to have to move them up into the non-exempt category so I don't pay them overtime, or do I have to start paying them overtime? So these are things on the minds of the owners when they're looking at their costs and how to deal with this. So labor is a big issue. Hard goods. I don't have a lot to say here except that I'm not aware of anything that over time decreases in price when it comes to the hard goods stuff, whether it's stuff that you're selling in the pro shop or things that you're buying for your golf course to operate. Everything is going up. And so, that's always a concern of golf course owners and operators. You have to think like an owner in this case too, because as employees, there are a lot of folks out there that will just go out and they'll buy their things, they'll buy their stuff, but if you think like an owner, you're obviously going to be thinking, how do I make sure that I get the best value for my dollar here, and that I'm negotiating as much as I can to get the best deal. Maintenance is not getting any cheaper as well. Not only the labor side of it, but just simply the cost of running and operating the turf out that's out there. That's rising as well. One of the things that's on the mind of a lot of golf course owners as well is looming capital expenditures, meaning, oh gosh, we built our golf course in 1997. It's coming up on 21 years in operations. That irrigation system, boy, that thing's going to probably need to be replaced in the next couple of years. Well, that could be a 7-figure expenditure, or that clubhouse is looking a little tired, and the golf course owner operator might not have stocked away $500,000 to pay for an upgrade or renovation. So that's a big deal. The deferred maintenance on issues or large capital items that might be coming down the road. If you're a private club, you obviously have more options than if you're at a public golf course with regard to your members agreeing on assessments to help finance a lot of this stuff. But if you're not at a private club, or you're one that doesn't really like assessments, then these are big issues on the minds of course operators, because most of them don't have the margins to simply save for these kinds of things. So as a PGA professional, if you understand these matters, then you can come to the job understanding and sympathizing with what's happening on the larger picture of the operations. And then the last rising expense that I'll mention are the online tee time agencies. Doing business with the online tee time agencies is not getting any cheaper, and they're obviously looking for ways to raise more and more revenue, and they are. And so what our concern is that we have a lot of operators out there that aren't really paying attention to make sure that they get the best deal possible at the lowest possible cost for the services that they want. And what I'm going to do here on the next slide is give you some ideas on how to fix some of these issues, right? So Any questions right now about the rising expenses that concern? Okay. So here's some fixes to think about. As a staff member, be that guy or that girl who finds the savings. I'll tell you what, there's nothing that makes me happier as CEO of this organization. And keep in mind, I don't own this organization, right? But I'm cheap enough to know that I'd like a good deal. And when any of my staff members say, hey, Jay, you know what, I renegotiated our telephone, our voice over internet phone system with the local telephone company, we're gonna save $300 a month. And I didn't have to prompt them to do so. Oh my gosh, do I value that employee like crazy, right? What I'm saying here is on the whole expense thing, I can't control expenses. You can't control all the expenses, but I encourage you to be that person that looks for and can successfully bring to your owner operator, hey, look what I did. I helped drive down the costs without jeopardizing the service or the quality of whatever it is that's so important to you. Be that guy is what I'm saying, because there's nothing more important than that guy that has an eye to how much you're paying for everything, right? I also encourage you to participate in group purchasing organizations, right? Like NGCOA has our Smart Buy program. We've got hundreds of vendors that offer member-only deals. I'm sure you get, advantages as PGA professionals. There are all kinds of, partnerships with the PGA of America or maybe even the Southern California section that affords you some nice discounts on goods and services for your golf course. Do it. It surprises me that 80% of the industry is not participating in a GPO of some kind, whether it's VGM or ours or whatever. Just dive in and start saving, right? You have access to it, so do it. Even if it's just on one major category, like for us with Yamaha golf cars, it is a handsome rebate that's on the table for our members. So I encourage you to check out the group purchasing organizations and utilize that membership. With the online tee time agencies, I encourage you, if you're in the public space and you're listening today, is to negotiate. Remember, the inventory is yours. You have the inventory they want. So you are in the control seat when it comes to negotiating the right terms and services, and that means the cost as well. If you're engaging in bartered inventory, that whether it's Golf Now or Tee Off, that they get to sell your tee times and keep the revenue for 1 or 2 of those tee times per day, I encourage you to break out your calculator, make sure you get reports on how many rounds were bartered, and figure out what that would have brought you had you sold those bartered rounds yourself, and start doing the calculation as to what you're giving up here. Because while if you're bartering, then you can look at this saying it's costing you nothing for these services, but we're talking about net income here, folks. So if Golf Now or another company is selling $25,000 a year in tee times for you, but you could have bought the services for $12,000 a year, then you really should sit down and take a look at what's going on, right? So negotiate. Also, and I know I probably don't have any superintendents on the phone here today, but utilize best maintenance practices for your cost controls. There's a lot going on in the maintenance world today about how to save costs, man hours and mower hours and so forth, that to leave some of the course so that it's not mowed as much as it used to be, or you let it go wild, or looking at traffic patterns on your course to know where are your golfers actually walking and riding, and build some cost-effective maintenance practices around that. So making sure that your superintendent is on top of his game on utilizing best practices for cost controls. There's some great practices out there that the GCSAA and USGA Green Section are promulgating. So I encourage you to make sure that your folks are involved in those organizations. So I'll stop there, John, and I'll take any questions when it comes to rising expenses as one of the top 4 things on the minds of owners and operators.
Yes, Mr. Karen, one of the questions I have here in terms of stability concerning rising minimum wage, is there any discussion in your circles, politically speaking, where that $15 by 2022 may not go into effect or may be repealed before that time?
It's a good question. Whoever asked that, John. And this is in particular to California, and actually California and New York. I looked at a chart that shows all the minimum wage amounts by state. Obviously, federal minimum wage is $7.25, I believe, but the states obviously can supersede that and change it. So I'm not aware of anything happening that the golf industry is involved in California against the minimum wage increases. I'm assuming it's already a law passed in California, so to get that repealed would probably mean a change of parties in the California state legislature, and change in parties at the governor level as well in order for that to happen. So just my gut would be, in my 4-second response is, there's just no way that's going to change unless there's a political change in Sacramento. Doesn't mean that people shouldn't fight for change. So what I would suggest is that anybody on the phone that's concerned about this should contact the California Golf Course Owners Association, just to see if that organization is lending its voice to the argument against minimum wage increases. So that's all I can say today, John. Okay. Any other questions?
And in terms of when it comes time to take advantage of like smart buys on a grander scale, what about the purchasing of properties that are in duress? Do you see a trend moving in that direction, or do you think that those will probably be more saleable as real estate developments?
Oh, wow, really good question. That's about as local as it can get, as far as we're not seeing any national trends on that. We're seeing the course closures, and what's happening with that is that they've got the zoning abilities to do something else with the land in many of these cases, not all the cases, right? So that's the trend, is not necessarily people looking at these courses that are in duress and taking them over. And that's happening. That happens in any market, right? You've got large management companies as well that are looking for those kinds of opportunities. So yes, that's happening all the time, but I'm not seeing a trend in that case, because lending is still a very difficult equation. If lending was easy, you probably see more people doing that. But since lending itself and financing of a golf course is not as easy as it used to be, I don't think we've seen any commensurate interest in buying up distressed properties. So, okay, sure thing. I'll keep moving because we're at 11:34 my time, 8:34 your time. All right. The second big issue is downward price pressure. All right. So what's causing that, right? Oh, I should have shown. I forgot to add a number to this, but I may have mentioned it in Pomona at the section meeting. But if you look at consumer price index over time, which is basically the cost of things that consumers are buying, and you look at the rise in prices of things over the last, say, 10 or 20 years, everything outpaces golf. Meaning golf used to cost like $34 a round, now it costs on average $37 a round, so it has gone up. But it has not kept pace with everything else in American society, meaning that golf is really cheaper than it used to be in relative terms, right? That is not necessarily a great thing. And I'm not saying that everybody should find ways to raise the prices, because that would be collusion and that would not be allowed by our organization. But you can have some food for thought and bring some practices to your own business. So some things to think about that are making it a struggle to have healthier pricing. One, again, going back to the online tee time agencies. And if you're a private club and you're listening, you're thinking, well, that doesn't have to do with me. Think again. Because if golf continues to be, if golf at really good courses continues to be relatively cheap, then people will say, well, why do I need to join a club, right? When I don't have to pay the dues and I can get access to wonderful courses for a very low price, right? So there's a cascading effect to all this that affects everybody. So with the online tee time agencies, there's a really great way of describing the rise of the online tee time agencies like the Golf Nows and the tee offs and so forth, is that it feels like there is basically a new golf course in the marketplace when they come into your market and they're successful, meaning that the rounds that they sell, that they get to keep the revenue, is no different than a golf course that popped out of the ground that's taking your golfers from you, right? So that's a very interesting way of doing it. It's kind of like a virtual golf course, simply because of the barter method of compensation. Also, if you look at these sites, I think there's what I'm calling the commoditization of golf happening here. If you look at you go to try to book a round, mostly what it does, it says, hey, where do you want to play? How much do you want to pay? And so it's training the golfer to basically only hunt for golf based on price and available time, right? When we know that every golf course in America is different, it has a different value proposition, different assets, different wonderful things about them, but you really can't see that on the interface when you're trying to buy a round of golf on these sites. No different than like the car rental agencies. In that case, for the most part, I would argue that that is a commodity. Personally, I don't care if it's Dollar or Thrifty or Avis or Enterprise. Show me the matrix, show me what kind of car I can get and how much, and that's done. So the rental car companies would argue with me, obviously, on that, but as a consumer, they've been successful in commoditizing the rental car business. And unfortunately, it's happening with golf when you've got millions and millions of rounds booked on these websites. So that kind of, I think, psychologically causes people to shop on price, and that brings that, it has a downward price pressure kind of effect on the market. Also, I think at the golf course level, one of the biggest problems is that people behind the counter will listen to the loudest voice when it comes to discounting, right? Oh, the group of seniors, this is the classic example, the group of seniors that is saying, well, you know what, if you don't drop the rate to $22, we're gonna walk, right? And you think, no, we don't want you to walk, we don't want you to walk, you know, when it might be one or two old guys that are really complaining. And so a lot of folks will adjust their prices simply because they don't want to deal with the conflict, or they fear they're gonna miss out, right? When that doesn't represent necessarily the entire customer base, right? So don't set large scale pricing or broad pricing based on just the loudest complaints, right? You need to take a real intelligent look at the segments of your customers and figure out, you know, who's really price sensitive and who's not, and what are you going to do about that? Because not everybody is price sensitive. I would argue most Americans today are more time sensitive than they are price sensitive, right? So don't make the assumption that every one of your customers is as price sensitive as they appear to be sometimes. Also, one of the issues that we have at the owner level is that not a lot of the employees, or not all the employees, think like an owner when it comes to pricing, right? You're thinking, hey, I'm getting my salary and I'm getting my wage, whatever it is. So it's no skin off my back if I say yes to the guys that are trying to beat me up on the counter today, or the guy that comes in and says, hey, listen, I know the hot deal for the 10:52 tee time was $18 and the 11 o'clock tee time is 36. Hey, can you give me the $18 price? Oh, yeah, go ahead. The owner standing by the counter might say, no, sorry, and explain the situation. Whereas if you're not the owner, you might just say, yeah, that's fine. All right, yeah, no problem. Right? And so that can have that effect. Not saying anybody on the phone here is like that necessarily, but we know that there are folks out there that if you think like that, if you don't think like the owner when it comes to pricing, then you're leaving money on the table. That's just this is a plain, simple argument to make there. Also, the last thing I'll mention about downward price pressure is what I'll call the Grouponing of golf. You know, Groupon's been around for probably 8 or 9 years now, and all those discounting sites, and I still see golf courses participating on those every week almost, as kind of an easy, quick fix to get some cash in the door. But you know what we know what that does is it brings down the value of golf. It says basically, well, sure, we'll almost give away golf, and that is one of those things in the marketplace that creates this downward price pressure that we all have to deal with, right? And so those are the biggest things that are happening that are working against us. So what are the fixes? What do we do about this? One is take total control of your inventory and pricing. If you are working with a third party, that you are looking at it, you're monitoring it, you're setting the rules as far as if you are bartering, they're saying, listen, you cannot go below X price for the bartered rounds of golf. They may walk and they say, sorry, we're not going to do that, but it's your inventory, folks. You have to maintain control of this, right? So that first of all, just make sure you're positioned in such a way that you recognize that this is your inventory. When you understand that, then you maintain control of a lot more of the pricing situation. Also, look at your day part pricing differently, meaning I see a lot of golf courses still saying, all right, from 7:30 a.m. to 11 a.m., it's $88. From 11:08 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., it goes down to $62, and then 2 p.m. to whatever, it goes down to $48 for our twilight. So you kind of pick 3 breaks during the day, these day parts, and you start pricing it differently. I would argue that you should look at smaller increments. Don't have 2 or 3 hour blocks of the same exact price. change that price more frequently during the day. You can still bring it down if you feel like, you know, the later in the day is the inventory that has the lowest demand. I can understand still having pricing along those lines, but don't make such big jumps at big blocks during the day. Make smaller jumps, and you might what you'll find is that your revenue that you keep is going to be a little bit larger, right? Instead of jumping from $66 to $42 over a 3-hour period, you know, just do it slowly. You move it to 62 to 58 to 52 and so forth. And I don't think you're going to give up anything here as far as tee times. People will still buy, they'll still choose the one they want, but you might get a few bucks more in your pocket based on a different way of approaching the day part question. Consider the demand-based thing called dynamic pricing, you know, using those software systems that are out there that allow you to set some rules based on if demand is good, that your system automatically changes the prices of your rounds based on the rules and behaviors that you put in there. I certainly would encourage you guys to consider it and check it out and test it out and see how it works for you. Maybe test it out in the shoulder seasons more than the high season when you know demand is high. There's no point in engaging too much in dynamic pricing in your best of season, but when the season starts slowing down, start taking a look at this and those dynamic pricing systems that are out there that'll help you keep a little bit more money in your pocket. It might not help drive more rounds, but it certainly might help drive a little bit more revenue that stays in the wallet of the golf course, if you will. If you're going to discount and offer specials and promotions, I would encourage you to do it in a targeted way. Don't blanket discount. Don't take your entire email database and say, okay, folks, email everyone out there that this Saturday we've dropped the price 10 bucks, come on out, we'd love to see you, right? That's not the best way to do it. If you look at Golf Now, the origination of Golf Now out in the California and Arizona market was strictly email based, right? There was no Golf Now website. It was basically these guys that went to golf courses and said, hey, listen, we're going to email your customers and try to sell the hardest tee times to sell, the junk tee times, the stuff that you can't sell, and we're only going to email it. We're not going to post these things on your website. The reason they did that was to keep it more discreet, to not broadcast these discounts all the time. And that was really successful. So I encourage you, if you're going to do this, be as targeted as you can so you're not just blanketing, discounting your promotions and so forth. When it comes to grouponing, my advice is to not engage in it and let the other guy do it. Meaning that if everybody had the mentality to let the other guy do grouponing, then nobody would do it. It would end up being that the other guy, there would be no other guy at the end of the day, right? So I think what we find is a lot of golf course operators test these things out and they get hooked on them. They think that they can't get off of them. And when they do get off of them, they find, wow, my business wasn't hurt and I actually have a better net income as a result. So it's a risk to get off of these systems, but so many golf course operators have told success stories that when they get off of them, they see more income in their bank account. I also encourage you to sign up for the Orca report. If you're a public facility, I don't think this is not really for privates, and this is the golf industry's version of measuring rounds and revenue and occupancy and channel mix, where are your tee times coming from, as well as barter opportunity cost reporting, that if you had sold your bartered rounds, how much revenue would you have received for those? I would encourage you to do that. This actually was born in California, and you guys might know Mike Laust a lot, who started this program, but we're in partnership with them. So I would encourage you to check out orcareport.com, because that will give you some really great insights into your own business. Where are your tee times coming from? How is the pricing going? And intelligently look at your business and say, you know what, we're missing an opportunity here, or over here, or over here. So take a look at that. And also, lastly, on the price pressure issue, pay close attention to the content coming out of the Golf USA Tee Time Coalition. The point of the coalition is to equip golf course operators with the knowledge to make better decisions about your inventory and your pricing. So really, follow the group on Twitter, sign up for the emails, pay attention. You'll see things coming through the PGA of America and NGCOA content about what's happening here. In fact, I'm sure you'll start seeing folks at the section meetings coming from the coalition office, because the PGA is about to start investing in more education on tee time marketing issues. So John, I will stop there and take any questions on the price question. Okay.
Mr. Karen, no questions at this time.
Thanks, John. Okay, move on then. All right, so number 3 of 4, as far as the biggest issues on the minds of operators. if I was to have an operator here sitting across the desk from me and ask them, what do you feel is, what is your biggest challenge? So many of them would say, being an employer. You know, you just want to grow grass, have a great golf course, please people, have them go out there, have a great time. But the hardest part of being an employer is being the employer, right? Having a business, right? And having to hire people. So find great people, keep great people. Those are very difficult things in today's workplace environment, especially when the unemployment rate is as low as it has been, something like 30 some odd years, right? So finding and keeping great people. You know, and one thing I'll add to this here is that, you know, I've been around the golf industry for a long time, and so have a lot of you. And some of you may have come to the golf industry because you were passionate. You just fell in love with golf, and you only wanted to be around golf for a career. A lot of PGA professionals are like that, right? Sometimes we think, if we're passionate about golf, that everybody thinks like us, right? But what I'm afraid of is that the days of that special magnetism that golf had might be something more of the past, right? Meaning that the younger generation of workers, they're not necessarily as in love and passionate about golf as we were and we are. So that, my gosh, why wouldn't you want to work at a golf course, right? And they could probably then list 25 reasons why they wouldn't want to work at a golf course, right? So keep in mind that not everybody has the same passion that we did growing up for this game, which makes it harder to find people and keep people in and around the golf space because we don't have that magnetism, I think, like we used to. But that means we have to replace that magnetism with some specific practices at the workplace to make it a wonderful place to work, right? Which I'll talk about in a minute. But one of the other challenges is that we have multi-generational workplace. We got kids that are 17 and guys that are 77 working at the golf course, and everybody has a different definition of what it means to work hard. And as the PGA professional, wherever you are in the mix of this, sometimes it's your challenge to figure out how to please everybody, how to make everybody, I would say please them in the sense, you know, that your job is to please everybody, but how to make it work in this multi-generational workplace, right? And what does that mean from a cultural standpoint to work at that golf course? And then lastly, under workplace challenges is that, you know, the regulations just add up. They never disappear, right? And so more and more workplace regulations will continue. Everything from transgender issues, sexual harassment matters, wage and hour, you know, paid vacation, paid breaks, you name it, right? Smoking, not smoking at work, all kinds of regulations. You can list probably a million of them, and they'll continue to increase. And as an employer, we worry about those regulations. Are we in compliance or not, right? And if you're the PGA professional and you're the one who's figured these things out, if you're on the ball as far as workplace regulations, then you're going to, again, be that much more valuable to your place of employment. So some of the fixes here, you know, is what I mentioned. Study workplace culture. Be that guy. Remember when I said be that guy that's looking and hunting for those discounts in the better pricing on goods and services? Be that guy that is studying workplace culture, and be the person that is bending the ear of your general manager or your owner and saying, you know, what would make this a wonderful place to work is if we looked at this issue, or if we studied this, or let's do a team building exercise, or let's as a team, let's talk about these issues, so that the workplace culture is something that is more progressive than old-fashioned, right? You have to be progressive with these things. If you're old-fashioned, you'll get stuck in the past and you'll lose the race for getting and keeping good people. Be that place where people want to work because you treat them well and care about them. You know, you can have all the policies and procedures and benefits you want, but I'll tell you what, if you don't treat the people and demonstrate a true care about them, then they're not going to, it's not going to be a place where they want to come to work, right? So that's a psychological issue, but you know what, everybody that goes to work every day, you choose who you're going to be and how you're going to treat people. The better you can treat your fellow workers and care about them, the more they're going to feel like this is a place where I really want to spend my day, right? So it is a little bit psychological, but you know, it's important. When you're hiring people, even though if you're in a tough labor environment, don't settle. Find the people with those qualities that you really need at your operation. If you settle and hire any warm body, then you're going to be a least common denominator place to work, and your performance will probably follow suit, right? One of my board members has a great saying. He says, hire slow, fire fast. And that's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten as someone who has to hire and fire people, is I take my time. Yes, it's a pain in the ass when you have someone you have a position that's not filled for a time and you're thinking, I got to work extra, and I've got to work harder to fill that void for now until we hire someone. I'll tell you what, though, my advice is to be patient and don't settle. Find the right person every time you can for whatever job it might be, even if it's a a minimum wage job or if it's one of the executive level positions. Don't settle. Hire slow, fire fast is the best advice I've gotten. Use the PGA of America's resources. Career Services has seen quite a shot in the arm from the national office over the past couple of years. Scott Kimmick and John Easterbrook, that oversees all of that, they really have done a good job upping their game as far as resources available, whether it's the job board information or career, other career resources. Pay attention to what's happening there, because they might be able to have some really wonderful resources for you when you're dealing with workplace challenges. And then lastly here, I would encourage you, if you're not members of the CGCOA, to join the CGCOA. Going back to that question about minimum wage issues, well, join the trade association, the California Golf Course Owners Association, because they and we at the national office are following these advocacy issues, and we update our members all the time when it comes to changes in policy, things that you need to know about as employers. So I would encourage you, if you're not a member of the organization, to join. It's only like something like $500 a year to be a member of the organization, which gets you a national membership. So those are just some pieces of advice on workplace challenge issues. John, any questions before I dive into the last one?
No, sir.
All right. Well, we'll keep moving on. The last one, and this is the one that's near and dear to a lot of folks that are in the PGA of America, is growing the base, getting more customers, getting more people into this wonderful game and sport that we love so much. So what's working against us? What are the difficulties here? What's keeping people up at night? Is just that, on a macro level, just thinking about the increase of competition of people's attention, time, and money. When I was growing up, I'm 44 years old. I'll tell you, when I was a kid, teenager, young adult, there just didn't seem to be a lot of choices of things to do, right, during the day. Well, how am I going to spend my weekends? What am I going to do? There were plenty of options, but not nearly what kids and young people and older people have today on what they can do with their time and money. And we compete with that, right? So that's got to be on your mind as a PGA professional, that we are competing not just with the golf course down the street, we're competing with everything happening out there. So you have to have a unique value proposition to overcome that. Lingering perceptions of golf. These have been around forever and they still exist, that golf is too expensive, it's too time consuming, it's too difficult. If you play golf, you disagree with those perceptions, right? Because you understand the value proposition of playing the game of golf. Those who don't play don't understand the value proposition. So it's our job as people who are selling golf and trying to grow the base is to sell the value proposition and overcome these perceptions and these obstacles. These things still exist out there, and it's up to us to overcome those. One of the things that also frustrates a lot of us in golf is that we actually don't go out there and sell golf. We don't evangelize very well that you should play golf. A lot of folks around this conference call today and outside of this conference call do a pretty decent job selling golf at your golf course, trying to sell tee times. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in business. But very few people really do a bang-up job of convincing people they need to try golf, pick up the game, grow the base, right? And we just need to do a better job of that. Also, I find that most golf courses don't invite people back. I mean, we're just not very good at it. We're not exceptionally good at customer relationship management, CRM, using our databases, inviting people back, making sure we invite them back before they leave the property. Can't tell you how many times I walk up the 18th, green, get a quick beer with some friends or whatever, and walk away, and nobody has said, hey, thanks for being here today. We'd love to see you come back, or anything like that, right? So we can't grow the base if we are losing more people than we're gaining, right? So we got to keep the people that we already have under the tent, and there are a lot of things we can do about that. But so here's some of the fixes that I think, some food for thought for all of you, whether it's you or the people that work for you or with you, is when looking at outreach, getting people to come and try golf for the first time, think like the non-golfers. And that's sometimes really hard to do, especially for PGA professionals, because it's been so long. It's been a long time since you were not a golfer. It's actually really hard to set aside those biases and think like a non-golfer and start fresh with your outreach approach. Look at your marketing. If you look at your website, you look at your marketing, are you just selling tee times and golf at your facility? How are you selling the concept of spending time at your facility, right? Not a lot of golf operators are doing this very well, and we have to do better. I would say if you're going to make concessions on pricing to draw people in, do it to the folks that either need the pricing, need the price breaks, or they're dipping their toe in the water of this game, and they haven't bought into the value proposition of a $100 round of golf. Think junior golf, obviously really low prices for junior golf. I'm a big proponent of. New golfers, right? If you go to your tee sheet, you see the prices. If you're a brand new golfer, you're probably gonna have sticker shock even at the $37 level because you haven't bought into the fact that that's worth your money yet. So if you can target your fees to brand new golfers to get them to try golf and use it under that a trial kind of context, I think that is very good, because once you hook them, once they have the golf bug, then they're going to be willing to spend that money. And I think a big thing that we also miss is the college-aged golfers. They're kind of in this no man's land, right? They grew up where daddy and mommy were paying for the golf for them until they were 18 and they went up to college. Now they're on their own and they're not earning an income, but they still want to play golf. And they're basically subject to the tee time prices that everybody else has to pay. If you can have very specific programs for the college kids, if you have a neighboring college or university, have specific programs just for them. Show your college ID, get X. I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think a lot of people leave the game of golf in their early 20s because they can't afford it, and not enough courses are trying to keep them in the game. And that's where you can offer off-peak times and specials to college-age folks. And then also, think about expanding the experience to expand the base, meaning don't necessarily just try selling the traditional 18-hole round as what people should be doing at your golf course. Look at what's happening with Topgolf and their Top Tracer technology, where we're going to see more driving ranges evolve into these wonderful places where people are playing games, and they've got these big screens, and they're able to use the shot tracer technology and really almost, you know, gamble, have fun, bring some of the food and beverage out to the driving range, turn it into a real fun center. That if you expand that experience, you're going to get more people buying into coming up to the golf course. Same thing with golf simulators. Boy, I am really bullish on this, that the more we can do to expand the experience, the better. And consider having more fun events. A lot of golf clubs and golf courses have that traditional ladies' night, men's night, you know, and all that kind of stuff. Hey, go out there, have a good time. But what we're seeing is more courses offering really fun events built around craziness and fun rules, and just out there to have a party and a good time. People just want to have a good time, right? And so the more of these kind of quote unquote fun events you can organize, I think the better. And my last slide on growing the base is get to a point where you're surprising and delighting your guests with food and beverage choices, right? I mean, have tacos, have all kinds of things available that you would not expect to find at a golf course. People are going to talk about it. They're going to come back and say, hey, remember that course has some pretty great food. Everybody and their sister is a foodie these days, and so we have to do a better job on delighting with food. Take a close look at your hospitality quotient. Do you actually have hospitality training for your frontline people? If not, I would encourage you to get it. It's one thing to hire good people, but if they don't really have the heart and soul for hospitality, we could be missing a major strategy here on keeping people in the game of golf, right? A lot of us that are in the PGA and otherwise, we love golf for golf. We don't need the hospitality as much because we just want to get on the course and have a good time. There are a lot of people today that need that hospitality. Last three things, I would encourage you, if you're not doing it already, to jump on board with the PGA Junior League Golf Experience. I am so enthusiastic about how golf is turning into a team sport, and expand the invitations to participate in that as much as possible. Go beyond, if you're a private club, go beyond your members. Invite the community to participate in the Junior League program. This, I think, is one of the brightest things happening in golf for the future of golf, is turning golf into a team sport. So continue doing that. Embrace the combo and multiple team movement. If you're not going to be in the market to build multiple tees, I'd love to see more scorecards offering the white and blue combo option on the scorecard, or the white and yellow combo option. The more we can do that, the more we're going to see golfers and customers choosing the right set of tees, which ultimately means a happier experience, which means coming back, right? So I encourage you to do more of that combo tee experience. And lastly, when you have decisions to make and you've got customers that are 70 years old and customers that are 30 years old, always err on the young side in your decisions in what you do as far as the experience. Because I'll tell you this, old people, older and old people, want to be young, and they will gravitate towards the younger things happening. You see 85-year-old people using iPhones, but I'll tell you this, young people do not gravitate towards wanting to be old, right? So when you're thinking about how do I change the experience, what do I do? Think young and err on the young side of your decisions. Any questions about growing the base as we close up, John?
Yes, in terms of PGA Junior League, how much communication does the National Golf Course Owners Association foster promoting that program?
To date, not very much, but that's about to change. We are in negotiations with the PGA as of this moment about what we can do together more to promulgate that, to get more, to enlist more courses participating. So that is at the center of our radar screen right now. I will admit that, you know, a lot of NGCOA members don't have PGA professionals employed at their facilities, and that becomes a sticking point for some folks, is that I've got to go find a PGA pro at another facility to help manage the program that I might develop. So that's a little bit of a roadblock for some folks, but nevertheless, we're going to double down and figure out how we can support this program. And we're in active discussions right now with the executives at the PGA of America to do that.
Now, kind of off the subject, but sort of relevant, in the association, the National Golf Course Owners Association, do you see what is the split between CCMA certified operators and PGA professional operators, or combination of both, the three entities? What would you say roughly is the breakdown?
I assume the first one was the certified club manager, and then PGA. I don't have the stats off the top of my head, but I can certainly venture to guess that the members, the people that are the point of contact for NGCOA members, I would bet that if we look at how many are PGA members and how many have CCM, it's probably at least 10-to-1 PGA over CCM. You know, we have about 600 private clubs in our organization, and I haven't measured it, but I'd venture to say a minority of those are CCM certified. We have a lot of PGA professionals that are in NGCOA in our organization that are running golf courses. So the ratio is pretty out of balance in that case, but I don't have figures with me. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That definitely sheds some light. I don't have any further questions. I don't have any further questions at this time. Mr. Karen, thank you very, very much.
Let me close out here, John. Let me close out. Yeah, let me close out here real quick.
Series. Want to thank everybody for attending this morning, and keep a lookout for the quiz on Mr. Karen's presentation. We're going to be sending that out here shortly, along with the YouTube address for this morning's Catalyst recording. Please take the quiz and return it to Sharon Kerfman at skerfman@pgahq.com. A score of 70% or higher will earn 1 MSR credit for attending this morning's session. Also want to encourage everybody to join us next Thursday. We usually do the Catalyst webinar every other Thursday or twice per month, but the way the schedule went with Mr. Karen, we actually have another Catalyst webinar next Thursday with Tom Addis, CEO of the Southern California section, who's going to be presenting on the section. So I encourage everybody to register for that and join us next week. Mr. Karen, thank you very much for your time this morning. It was fantastic. I do appreciate it. On behalf of the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA, thank you very, very much for your time today.
You're welcome, John.
Have a great day, everybody. Take care.